Good morning, Grace Chapel family. My name is Scott Farrar. I'm one of the elders at Grace Chapel, and standing with me are elders Tyler Ring and Steve Craver. There are other elders who aren't here for a variety of reasons, ranging from out of town. One of them is battling COVID, one in quarantine. But we're standing here together to just read to you a statement. We've had a rough couple of weeks in the Grace Chapel family, and I'm going to just share with you a prepared statement. Over the past several years, our beloved pastor, Steve Berger, has been sensing the Lord's calling for a new direction in his life and ministry. This would require a transition plan within Grace Chapel for Pastor Berger stepping into his new ministry. And if you were here on January 17th of this year, we announced we were entering into an official transition whereby Steve Berger, who led this church for 26 years, was moving into a founding pastor role and a new calling on his life. And that Rob Rogers, at the same time, moved into the role of lead pastor. As with most any transition of authority or leadership change of this magnitude, it can create difficulties in communication and expectations as we learn to walk together through hurdles and obstacles. It's been quite messy and confusing. Over time, tensions continued to build, and we reached a tipping point that resulted in Mark Bright resigning as executive pastor. A few days later, as we addressed some of our concerns during a Monday night elder board meeting, Rob Rogers offered his resignation to the elder board. On this point, to dispel any rumors to the contrary, we can tell you that there's no moral failure from either of these two men. As elders, we understand the gravity of these decisions and how they affect the congregation moving forward. As we work through this and after prayerfully weighing options on the table, for Rob specifically and for Grace Chapel, as elders of this church, we agree that Rob Rogers is to serve in the position of lead pastor of Grace Chapel, and we have reinstated Rob Rogers as the lead pastor of this congregation. Let me further state that all of the elders, including Pastor Steve Berger and Pastor Rob Rogers, desire full and complete reconciliation. The elder board strongly encourages Rob and Steve to continue to pursue reconciliation and prayerfully a path towards restoration. In closing on my comments, I certainly want to acknowledge and offer my personal heartfelt thanks during these past few weeks to the other men that make up our elder board: James Brown, Tyler Ring, Mike Harris, Steve Craver, Kurt Beasley, Steve Berger, and Ron Klontz. Folks, these men have spent countless hours of deliberation, prayer, fasting, and consultation with an ear and a heart towards God so that we can all continue equipping people who call Grace Chapel their home church to become passionate servants of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
My turn. Grace Chapel, several months ago, I mentioned in another public statement that we are going to make mistakes, and that as a pastor and a leader, that I am going to make mistakes. And I made a commitment to you that when I do make mistakes, I will own them and I will learn from them. And I want to own the role that I played in what led to the tipping point that the elders just spoke about. In the absence of clarity during this transition period, there have been moments where I have pushed too hard and too fast, and at the root of that is pride. And as a result, I have caused offense to be taken. From me to the family of Grace Chapel, I am deeply sorry for any hurt, confusion, or frustration that my part has caused. 3 years ago, my family and I handed off a church we planted in Washington in order to move here. And after pouring our lives into that church for 7 years, that transition in our own lives was incredibly difficult. I cannot imagine pouring my life into something for 26 years, how difficult it would be to hand that off. I cannot imagine the difficulty of that. And when I first came to Christ, Steve Berger was one of the two men that took me under his wing and showed me the ropes of Christianity. And Steve has been a spiritual father to me over the years. I'm deeply grateful for his investment into my life and the many opportunities that he's given me. And because of the difficulty in the transition, there has been a strain placed on the relationship between Steve and myself. Offenses have been taken, wounding has happened on both sides, and there's been a level of skepticism toward one another in this process that is neither right nor good. And on top of that, the elders were placed in the middle of an incredibly difficult situation. But what I want you to know is that a little over a week ago, Steve and I sat down face to face, along with the leadership of Pastor Dave Buring, and we began the reconciliation of our relationship. And I am wholeheartedly committed to doing my part in that, and Steve has communicated to me that he is committed to the same. Yeah. And I want to be crystal clear. I love Steve Berger. I love the Berger family. Steve, I want you and your family. I want ASI with everything in me. I want it to succeed and flourish, because I know and God knows and we all know that we need God's kingdom presence in Washington, D.C. And in our meeting over a week ago, Steve shared with me his love for me, my family, for Grace Chapel, and wants us to succeed and flourish as well. And we are prioritizing the health of our relationship because, number one, and most importantly, this is our biblical mandate. As followers of Jesus, this is our biblical mandate. And number two, we want to ensure that something like this never happens again. Again, in an effort to address questions and concerns that have surfaced in the past few weeks, I want to say a couple of things about Pastor Mark Bright. First, I've had the privilege of watching Mark Bright serve this church daily for almost 3 years. He is a man of incredible talent and self-sacrifice. And this church would not be the thriving body of believers that it is without his guidance and leadership over the last 10 years of his service to this church. The stress of managing a church of this size should never be underestimated, and we all owe him a debt of gratitude for the consistent and sacrificial way he has served this body. I know that he has felt some of the same stresses and tension of the transition that I've experienced, and I know that this played into his decision to resign. So when the elders tell you that there was no moral failure on his part, I want to affirm that statement from my position as well and put to rest any rumors or assumptions. Pastor Mark is as good a man as I have ever known, and I consider him one of my closest friends. And while the motivation for Mark's resignation has not yet been made fully known, I look forward to helping in any way possible to restore the relationship with Mark and this body of believers in the same way that Steve and I are working to reconcile and restore our relationship as well. Grace Chapel was the first church that I was ever a part of, over 17 years ago. And when our family moved back to this area 3 years ago, we fully believed that God was calling us to pastor Grace Chapel into the future. And even though our family, even though we've been shaken over the events of the last several weeks, this belief has never wavered. And I want you to know that the Rogers family is fully committed to loving and serving the congregation that changed my life forever. We're committed. Now, here's what else I know. I know that the devil would love to destroy the impact and the legacy of Steve Berger and undermine his new endeavor, ASI. I know that the enemy of our souls would love to divide the people of Grace Chapel and destroy the incredible work that God wants to do in us and through us in our future. The way he does that, this is nothing new.